What an incredible journey we just witnessed together. Marcus learned that sometimes the greatest gift isn't fixing what we think is broken, but celebrating what makes us uniquely beautiful. Emma and Ethan's story reminds us that there are countless ways to see the world, and each perspective has something extraordinary to offer. If this story touched your heart and opened your eyes to new possibilities, smash that like button right now. And hey, if you're craving more powerful stories that challenge how we see ourselves and others, hit subscribe and ring that notification bell. I'm curious. Drop a comment below and tell me what city you're watching from. Are you in New York like Marcus? Portland like Dr. Elena? Or somewhere completely different? I love connecting with viewers from around the globe. And if you know someone who needs to hear Emma and Ethan's message about embracing their unique gifts, share this video with them right now. Sometimes the story that changes everything is just one share away. Thanks for being part of this incredible community. I'll see you in the next story. Marcus Blackwood stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, watching the city sprawl beneath him like a kingdom he'd conquered. At 35, he commanded a tech empire worth billions, his name whispered in boardrooms from Silicon Valley to Tokyo. The glass reflected his sharp features, the expensive Italian suit that fit like armor, and the hollowness in his dark eyes that no amount of success could fill. Mr. Blackwood? His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. The pediatric ophthalmologist is here for your 4 o'clock. Marcus closed his eyes briefly. Another doctor. Another expensive consultation. Another inevitable disappointment. Send him in. Dr. Richardson entered with the kind of measured confidence that came from delivering life-changing news to desperate families. He was the 3rd specialist this month, recommended by colleagues in Switzerland, flown in at Marcus's expense like a medical mercenary. Mr. Blackwood, I've reviewed your children's files extensively, Dr. Richardson began, settling into the leather chair across from Marcus's mahogany desk. Emma and Ethan's condition is complex. The congenital glaucoma has progressed beyond what traditional surgery can address. The optic nerve damage is severe. Marcus had heard variations of this speech before. His jaw tightened. Cut to the chase, doctor. Can you help them or not? Current medical technology cannot restore their sight, Dr. Richardson said carefully. However, there are experimental treatments being developed. Gene therapy, stem cell research, bioengineering. I've funded 3 research facilities already, Marcus interrupted. I've written checks that could feed small countries. I've flown my children to every specialist from Boston to Beijing. They're 7 years old, and they've never seen a sunset, never seen my face, never seen anything but darkness. His voice cracked slightly on the last word. Dr. Richardson leaned forward. Mr. Blackwood, there's a researcher I've heard about. Dr. Elena Vasquez. She's doing groundbreaking work with neural interfaces and artificial vision systems. Her approach is unconventional, but her preliminary results are extraordinary. Where? Marcus was already reaching for his phone. That's the thing. She's not affiliated with any major institution. She operates independently, funding her own research. Some call her brilliant. Others think she's reckless. Dr. Richardson paused. She's in Portland, working out of a converted warehouse. Marcus stood abruptly, his chair rolling back. Through the windows, the city lights were beginning to twinkle as evening approached. Somewhere in his Fifth Avenue mansion, Emma and Ethan were having dinner, navigating their world through sound and touch, their laughter the only thing that could make him forget his failures as a father. Get me everything you can on this Dr. Vasquez, he said. I want her research, her background, her coffee preferences if necessary. Sir, you should know, she's reportedly very selective about her patients. Money doesn't seem to motivate her. Marcus turned from the window, and Dr. Richardson saw something dangerous flicker in his eyes. Doctor, I didn't become the youngest billionaire in tech by accepting no for an answer. If this Elena Vasquez can help my children, then she will help them. I'll make sure of it. After Dr. Richardson left, Marcus remained by the window as Manhattan transformed into a glittering maze of light and shadow. His reflection stared back at him, and for a moment, he saw not the powerful CEO who could buy and sell companies with a phone call, but a desperate father who would trade everything, Every building bearing his name, every stock option, every digital empire he'd built, for one moment of his children seeing him smile. His phone buzzed with a text from his housekeeper. The twins are asking when Daddy's coming home. Emma says she dreamed she could see you today. Marcus closed his eyes against the familiar ache in his chest. Emma's dreams were always about seeing colors she'd never experienced, faces she'd never glimpsed, a world that existed only in her imagination. He'd given his children everything money could buy. The best education, the finest clothes, toys that could fill warehouses, and caregivers who loved them like their own. But he couldn't give them the one thing they truly wanted, the one thing that haunted his every waking moment. As he gathered his things to leave the office, Marcus made a silent promise to the reflection in the window and to the children waiting at home. Dr. Elena Vasquez might be selective, might be unconventional, might be their last hope. But she would help Emma and Ethan see. He would make certain of it, no matter what it cost him. The city glittered below like a field of diamonds, beautiful and brilliant and utterly meaningless if his children couldn't share in its wonder. The converted warehouse in Portland's industrial district looked nothing like the sterile research facilities Marcus was accustomed to visiting. Paint peeled from its brick walls, and puddles from the morning rain reflected the gray Oregon sky. He double-checked the address his private investigators had provided, certain there had been some mistake. "This can't be right," muttered James, his security detail, eyeing the graffiti-covered building with professional skepticism. But the brass nameplate by the reinforced door was clear: Dr. Elena Vasquez, Biomedical Research. Marcus pressed the buzzer and waited, his expensive shoes splashing in a pothole as he shifted his weight. The woman who answered the door was nothing like he'd expected. Elena Vasquez was perhaps 30, with ink-black hair pulled into a messy ponytail and intelligent dark eyes that seemed to catalog everything about him in seconds. She wore faded jeans and a lab coat stained with what he hoped was coffee, and she looked at him with the kind of wariness usually reserved for door-to-door salesmen. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, not moving aside to let him enter. "You're persistent. My assistant told me you've called 17 times this week." "I'm a father with blind children, Dr. Vasquez. Persistence comes with the territory." Marcus studied her face, searching for the kind of hunger for money or recognition he was used to exploiting. Instead, he found something unsettling: complete indifference to his wealth and reputation. "I don't take new patients, Mr. Blackwood. I thought my assistant made that clear. Everyone takes new patients for the right price." Elena's laugh was sharp, almost insulting. "Ah, there it is. The arrogance that made you rich but apparently not wise." She started to close the door, but Marcus stepped forward. "Wait, please. I flew across the country because you might be able to help my children see. Don't shut the door on them because you dislike me." Something in his voice made her pause. Elena studied his face more carefully, and Marcus felt exposed under her scrutiny, as if she could see through his polished exterior to the desperation beneath. "Dr. Richardson sent you," she said finally. "It wasn't a question. He said you were brilliant. Also reckless. Richardson always was dramatic." Elena sighed, then stepped aside. 5 minutes, Mr. Blackwood. Then you leave." The interior of the warehouse took Marcus's breath away. The space had been transformed into a cutting-edge laboratory that would make MIT jealous. Holographic displays showed complex neural pathways, and sleek machinery hummed quietly in climate-controlled chambers. It was chaos and order merged into something beautiful and strange. "Impressive," Marcus admitted. "How do you fund this?" "Carefully. Selectively." Elena led him past a workstation where microscopic components were being assembled by robotic arms. "I take on one case at a time, usually children whose conditions are considered hopeless. I work until I find a solution or exhaust every possibility. And if you fail, then I don't take payment." She stopped at a wall covered with photographs. Dozens of children of various ages, all smiling, all looking directly at the camera with clear, bright eyes. "These are my successes. Children who were born blind, children who lost their sight to disease or accident. Now they see." Marcus stared at the wall, hope and skepticism warring in his chest. "What's your success rate?" 73% full vision restoration. Another 15% gained significant sight improvement. Elena's voice carried quiet pride. The remaining 12%. Those cases taught me what doesn't work. Those are extraordinary numbers. They're also why I'm selective. Each case requires months of work, sometimes years. I can't help everyone, so I choose the cases where I can make the biggest difference. She turned to face him fully. Your twins, Emma and Ethan. 7 years old, congenital glaucoma with severe optic nerve damage. Marcus nodded, surprised she knew their names. I've seen their medical files. Dr. Richardson forwarded them after your first call. Elena moved to a computer terminal and pulled up complex brain scans. Their case is challenging. The damage is extensive, but there are possibilities. What kind of possibilities? Elena hesitated, and Marcus sensed she was deciding how much to reveal. My approach isn't traditional surgery. I've developed a bio-integrated neural interface that bypasses damaged optic nerves entirely. It connects directly to the visual cortex, translating digital input into signals the brain interprets as sight. You're talking about implants. Bio-integrated technology that becomes part of the patient's neural network. It's not like a pacemaker or hearing aid, it literally rewires how the brain processes visual information. Elena's eyes lit up as she spoke, passion replacing wariness. The children who receive my treatment don't just see, they see better than people with natural vision. Enhanced color spectrum, improved night vision, the ability to zoom and focus like a camera. Marcus felt his heart racing. When can we begin? Elena's expression cooled. We can't. I told you, I don't take new patients. Why not? You just said their case has possibilities. Because, Mr. Blackwood, my treatment requires complete trust between doctor and patient. It requires families who understand that I'm not a miracle worker, I'm a scientist. It requires people who won't try to buy their way to the front of the line or threaten lawsuits if things don't go perfectly. She crossed her arms. In other words, it requires everything you're not. The rejection hit Marcus like a physical blow. He'd been dismissed before, by investors, competitors, critics, but this was different. This was about Emma and Ethan. Dr. Vasquez, I understand I may have made a poor first impression, but your reputation preceded you, Mr. Blackwood. The man who destroys competitors, who buys up patents to corner markets, who sees everything and everyone as either an asset or an obstacle. Elena shook her head. That approach might work in tech, but it has no place in my laboratory. Marcus stood in the converted warehouse, surrounded by millions of dollars in equipment, face to face with perhaps the only person who could help his children, and felt more powerless than he had since the day Emma and Ethan were diagnosed. Marcus didn't leave Portland. Instead, he checked into the city's most expensive hotel and began what his board of directors would later call the most important negotiation of his career. But this wasn't about market share or quarterly profits. This was about his children's future, and he was failing spectacularly. For 3 days, he tried everything. He offered to fund Elena's research for the next decade. She declined. He promised to build her a state-of-the-art facility wherever she wanted. She wasn't interested. He even offered to donate $1 billion to vision research in her name. She hung up on him. On the 4th morning, Marcus found himself in the warehouse district at dawn, not because he had an appointment, but because he was desperate enough to try ambushing her. He watched from his car as Elena arrived on a beat-up motorcycle, her helmet tucked under her arm, looking like anything but the brilliant scientist who held his family's hopes in her hands. She spotted him immediately. Are you stalking me now, Mr. Blackwood? I prefer to think of it as demonstrating commitment. Marcus got out of his car, noting how small she looked beside the massive warehouse door. Dr. Vasquez, my children wake up every morning in darkness. They ask me questions I can't answer, like what color is happiness, or why everyone cries when something is beautiful. I've failed them in the only way that matters, and you're telling me there's hope but I can't have it because you don't like my business practices. Elena paused with her key halfway to the lock. Your business practices include crushing innovative startups, hoarding patents that could help people, and treating employees like expendable resources. Why should I believe you'd be any different with my work? Because this isn't business, Marcus said quietly. This is about Emma and Ethan. Is it? Or is it about Marcus Blackwood not accepting defeat? The question hit harder than he'd expected. Marcus stared at the cracked pavement, rain beginning to fall around them. I don't know, he admitted. Maybe both. Does it matter if I can help them? Elena studied him for a long moment, rain droplets catching in her dark hair. Come inside, she said finally. But we're not talking about treatment. We're talking about you. The warehouse felt different this time, less like a laboratory and more like a sanctuary. Elena led him to a small office tucked behind the main research area, walls lined with medical journals and family photos of the children she'd helped. Tell me about Emma and Ethan, she said, settling behind a desk that looked like it had been salvaged from a thrift store. Not their medical history. Tell me about them. Marcus was prepared for technical questions, financial negotiations, legal discussions. He wasn't prepared for this. They're extraordinary. Emma has this laugh that makes everyone around her start smiling. She's brilliant, already reading Braille at a college level. She wants to be a scientist like you, actually. Elena raised an eyebrow. She knows about me? I may have mentioned your work. She's fascinated by the idea of bio-integrated technology. Marcus found himself relaxing as he talked about his children. Ethan is more cautious, but incredibly intuitive. He can navigate our house better than most people with sight. He has perfect pitch and composes melodies on his piano that make grown men cry. They sound remarkable. How do they feel about their blindness? Marcus paused. It was a question he'd been avoiding, even with himself. They're adaptable. But Emma asks me sometimes if she'll ever see colors, and Ethan wants to know what I look like. They don't complain, but I know they wonder what they're missing. And their mother? She died when they were 2. Car accident. Marcus's voice tightened. They don't remember her face, and I can't show it to them. Elena was quiet for several minutes, studying something on her computer screen. When she finally spoke, her voice had softened. Mr. Blackwood, my procedure isn't just experimental. It's dangerous. The neural interface requires surgery that could, in worst-case scenarios, cause seizures, personality changes, or even death. The success rate I quoted includes patients who experienced serious complications. What are you saying? I'm saying that even if I agreed to treat Emma and Ethan, you might lose more than their blindness. You might lose them entirely. Elena leaned forward. Are you prepared for that possibility? Marcus felt the room spinning slightly. He'd been so focused on the potential for success that he hadn't fully considered the risks. What kind of complications? Neural rejection of the interface can cause severe brain damage. Some patients experience constant hallucinations as their brain struggles to process artificial input. Others lose the ability to distinguish between digital and organic sensory input. Elena's voice was clinical, but her eyes showed the weight of these memories. I've had patients who begged me to remove the interface, and others who became so dependent on the enhanced vision that they couldn't function when the system needed maintenance. Marcus gripped the arms of his chair. You said 73% success rate. Full success, yes. But success means different things to different families. Some consider any level of sight restoration a success. Others. She trailed off. Others consider anything less than perfect vision a failure. Others lose their children to the pursuit of perfection. The words hung in the air between them like a challenge. Marcus thought about Emma's laughter, Ethan's music, the way they both trusted him completely to guide them through their world. Was he prepared to risk that for the chance they might see a sunset? I need to ask you something, Mr. Blackwood, and I need you to be completely honest. Elena's dark eyes held his steadily. If I could guarantee that your children would live happy, fulfilling lives without sight, successful, loved, contributing members of society, would that be enough for you? Or do you need them to consider yourself a successful father? The question cut to the core of everything Marcus had been avoiding. Was this about his children's happiness, or his own guilt? Was he trying to heal their blindness, or his own sense of failure? "I don't know," he whispered, and for the first time since entering her laboratory, Marcus Blackwood told the complete truth. Elena didn't give him an answer that day, or the next. Instead, she gave him an assignment that felt more like psychological torture. Spend 1 week living as Emma and Ethan did. Completely blind. "You want me to wear a blindfold for a week?" Marcus stared at her in disbelief. "I want you to understand what you're asking me to risk," Elena replied, pulling out a specially designed apparatus that looked nothing like a simple blindfold. "This is a neural inhibitor that temporarily blocks visual processing. It's completely reversible, but while you wear it, you'll experience true blindness, not just covered eyes, but no visual input to your brain whatsoever." Marcus held the device, feeling its weight. "And if I refuse?" "Then you go home to New York and find another doctor." Elena's expression was implacable. "But if you want me to consider treating Emma and Ethan, you need to understand their world intimately. Not as an observer, but as a participant." The first hour was terrifying. Marcus sat in his hotel room, the neural inhibitor activated, experiencing a darkness more complete than anything he'd imagined. It wasn't the darkness of closed eyes or a moonless night, it was the absolute absence of visual input. His brain kept trying to process sight that wasn't there, creating phantom flashes and shapes that meant nothing. By the third day, he was beginning to understand why Emma laughed so often. Sound became a source of joy he'd never appreciated. The way rain sounded different on various surfaces told stories about the world's texture and composition. Conversations took on new depth when he couldn't be distracted by visual cues. Elena visited him each day, not as a doctor checking on a patient, but as a guide helping him navigate this new reality. She taught him to use sound to orient himself in space, to identify materials by touch, to find beauty in sensations he'd previously ignored. "Ethan was right about my cologne," Marcus said on the 4th day as they sat in the hotel restaurant. "He was learning to eat without sight, focusing entirely on taste and texture. He told me it smells like overpriced confidence. I thought he was being clever." Elena laughed, the first time he'd heard her truly relaxed. Children who can't see are often brutally honest about what they observe through other senses. They don't have visual cues to make them polite. "What else don't I understand about their world?" "Touch means something different when it's your primary way of knowing someone," Elena said carefully. "Emma and Ethan know your face through their fingertips. They know your moods by the sound of your footsteps, your health by changes in your voice. They're connected to you in ways that sighted children often aren't with their parents." Marcus considered this. "You think I might be trying to fix something that isn't broken? I think you're trying to give them your world instead of appreciating theirs." On the 6th day, Elena took him to her laboratory. Moving through the space without sight was a revelation. He could hear the subtle differences in each machine's operation, smell the ozone from electronic equipment, feel the vibrations of different processes through the floor. "This is where I would perform the surgery," Elena said, guiding him to what felt like an operating theater. "The patient is conscious during the initial neural mapping, so they can provide feedback as I establish the interface connections." Marcus ran his hands over the surgical table, the monitoring equipment, the computers that would translate digital signals into the language of human consciousness. "How long does it take?" 8 to 12 hours for the initial procedure. Then weeks of calibration as the brain learns to interpret the new input. Elena paused. The children often described those first moments of sight as overwhelming. Too much information, too many colors, too much brightness. Some panic. Others become catatonic from sensory overload. But then they adapt. The successful ones do. The brain is remarkably plastic in children. They learn to process the artificial vision until it becomes natural. Elena moved around the table, her footsteps echoing in the space. But they also lose something. The heightened development of their other senses often diminishes as the brain prioritizes visual input. Emma might lose some of her extraordinary hearing. Ethan's perfect pitch might become merely good pitch. Marcus hadn't considered this trade-off. They'd lose parts of who they are now to gain sight? Everyone who gains sight loses something else. The question is whether what they gain is worth what they lose. That evening, Marcus sat in his hotel room with the neural inhibitor still active, thinking about Elena's words. He called home, listening to Emma and Ethan tell him about their day. Emma had learned a new piece on the violin. She was teaching herself by ear, creating finger positions for melodies she heard in her head. Ethan had baked cookies with their housekeeper, measuring ingredients by weight and texture, producing treats that were apparently better than anything the hotel's five-star restaurant could offer. "Daddy, when are you coming home?" Emma asked. "I miss the way you smell like your office and that soap you use." "I miss you too, sweetheart. Tell me what you did today." As they talked, Marcus realized something profound. His children weren't incomplete. They weren't broken versions of sighted children. They were Emma and Ethan, unique individuals who experienced the world in ways that were different, not lesser. But they still asked about colors. They still wondered what he looked like. They still dreamed of seeing. On the 7th day, Elena removed the neural inhibitor. The return of sight was jarring. Colors seemed too bright, shapes too sharp, the visual world overwhelming after a week without it. Marcus understood, for the first time, what children experienced when Elena gave them artificial vision. "Well," Elena asked as Marcus blinked in the laboratory's fluorescent light. "I understand why you're selective about patients," Marcus said slowly. "This isn't about fixing broken children. It's about fundamentally changing who they are." Elena nodded. "Now you understand the real question. Are you asking me to help Emma and Ethan see, or are you asking me to change them into different people?" Marcus looked around the laboratory, seeing it with new eyes, literally and figuratively. The question Elena posed wasn't just about medical ethics or surgical risks. It was about love, acceptance, and what it truly meant to give someone the world. "I need to think," he said. "Yes," Elena agreed. "You do." Marcus returned to New York with more questions than answers, but he didn't go straight home. Instead, he went to his office and did something unprecedented. He cleared his schedule for 2 weeks and told his assistant he was unavailable for anything short of a company emergency. Then he went home to really see his children. Emma was in the music room when he arrived, her fingers moving across the violin strings with a precision that seemed impossible without sight. She was composing, he realized, not playing a piece she'd learned, but creating something entirely new. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, full of longing and joy intertwined. "Daddy!" She set down her violin and ran toward the sound of his voice, navigating the familiar room with fluid grace. When she reached him, her hands immediately went to his face, reading his expression through touch. "You look tired," she said, tracing the lines around his eyes. "And sad. Did the doctor lady help?" "I'm not sure yet, sweetheart. Tell me about your song." Emma's face lit up. "It's about colors. I know I can't see them, but Mrs. Patterson read me about how blue sounds in poetry, and how red feels in stories. So I made music for each color." She tugged his hand toward the piano bench. "Want to hear red? It's angry and passionate and strong." She played a piece that was indeed all those things, full of dramatic crescendos and complex harmonies that seemed to paint emotions Marcus could almost see. Then came blue, flowing, peaceful, deep as an ocean. Yellow burst with joy and energy, while green grew and breathed like a living forest. "Emma, this is extraordinary," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "How did you know?" "I feel them," she said simply. "Maybe I can't see colors, but I know what they mean. Does that make sense?" Before Marcus could answer, Ethan appeared in the doorway, moving more cautiously than his sister but with equal precision. "Dad, you sound different." "Different how?" Ethan tilted his head, listening intently. "Quieter. Like you're hearing things you didn't hear before." He approached and took Marcus's hand. "Your hand feels different too. More aware." Marcus realized his son was right. The week of blindness had changed how he touched, listened, moved through space. "I spent some time learning to experience the world the way you and Emma do." "Why?" Emma asked. "Because I wanted to understand what it would mean to change that." The twins exchanged a look, not visual, but a moment of communication that seemed to pass between them through some other sense. Emma spoke first. "Dr. Vasquez could make us see, couldn't she?" Marcus was startled by her directness. "How did you know about that?" "We're not stupid, Dad," Ethan said gently. "You've been taking us to doctors our whole lives. We know you're trying to fix us." "You're not broken," Marcus said immediately. "Neither of you is broken. Then why do you want to change us?" Emma's question was curious, not accusatory, but it cut to the heart of everything Marcus had been grappling with. Marcus sat on the piano bench between his children, struggling to find words that could explain the complexity of parental love and guilt. "Because I want you to have every opportunity, every experience, every joy that life can offer." "But we already do," Ethan said. "We have music and stories, and the way food tastes, and the way rain feels, and the way you laugh when you think we're not listening." "Don't you want to see what I look like?" Marcus asked. "Don't you want to see colors, or sunsets, or your mother's pictures?" Emma was quiet for a long moment. "Sometimes I wonder," she admitted. "But then I think about how I might lose the way music looks to me if I could see regular things. The way I can see feelings in people's voices, or the pictures that stories paint in my mind." "What if you could have both?" Marcus asked. "Can we?" Ethan asked. "Dr. Vasquez told you we might lose things too, didn't she?" Marcus looked at his son with surprise. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because you're scared," Emma said simply. "You've been scared ever since you came back from Oregon. Not excited scared like when you're starting a new company. Really scared, like when Mom died." The observation hit Marcus like a physical blow. His children could read him in ways he'd never realized, understanding his emotions through subtle cues he didn't even know he was giving. "I am scared," he admitted. "Dr. Vasquez explained that the surgery could change who you are. You might gain sight but lose some of the amazing ways you understand the world now." "Like Emma's music colors," Ethan said thoughtfully. "Or the way I can tell what everyone in a room is feeling just by listening." "Exactly like that." The three of them sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of the decision settling around them. Finally, Emma spoke. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Anything. If we could see, would you still love us the same way?" The question nearly broke him. "Emma, I would love you if you were purple with polka dots and spoke only in mathematical equations." She giggled, but then grew serious again. "What if we chose not to do the surgery? Would you be disappointed?" Marcus realized this was the question he'd been afraid to ask himself. Would he be disappointed if his children chose to remain blind? Would he feel like he'd failed them, or would he be proud of them for making their own choice? "I would be proud of you for making such a difficult decision," he said slowly, and realized he meant it. "But I need you both to know that this is your choice, not mine." "Really?" Ethan asked skeptically. "You'd let us decide?" "You're the ones who would have to live with the consequences," Marcus said. "You understand your world better than I do. You know what you might gain and what you might lose." Emma reached over and took Ethan's hand, then reached for Marcus's. "We need to think about it." "Of course you do. Take all the time you need." "Dad." Ethan squeezed his hand. "Thank you for asking us instead of just deciding." As Marcus tucked his children into bed that night, he realized something profound had shifted. He'd gone to Portland as a desperate father trying to fix his children. He was returning as a man who finally understood that they might not need fixing at all. But the choice, ultimately, would be theirs to make. Emma and Ethan spent the next 3 weeks in what Marcus came to think of as deep consultation mode. They whispered together in corners, had long discussions with their teachers and therapists, and asked surprisingly sophisticated questions about identity, risk, and what it meant to change something fundamental about yourself. Marcus watched his children navigate this decision with a maturity that both amazed and humbled him. They approached it like the brilliant individuals they were, considering angles he hadn't even thought of. "Dad, can we video call Dr. Vasquez?" Emma asked one evening over dinner. "We want to talk to her ourselves." Marcus nearly choked on his wine. You want to interview her? We want to understand what she thinks we'd lose, Ethan explained. And what we might gain. You've told us, but we want to hear it from her. Elena agreed to the call, and Marcus found himself in the unusual position of facilitating a conversation between his 7-year-old children and one of the world's most innovative biomedical researchers. He sat quietly in his study, watching Emma and Ethan conduct what amounted to a scientific consultation. Dr. Vasquez, Emma began, my dad says you can make artificial eyes that connect to our brains. But they're not really eyes, are they? No, Emma, they're not, Elena replied from her laptop screen. They're more like computers that translate light into signals your brain can understand. Think of them as a new language your brain would learn to speak. What would we see that's different from regular people? Ethan asked. You'd see more than regular people in some ways. Better night vision, the ability to zoom in on distant objects, enhanced color perception. But you might see less in other ways. The technology can't perfectly replicate the subtlety of natural vision. Emma leaned forward toward the screen. Would I still be able to hear music in colors if I could actually see colors? Elena paused, clearly considering her answer carefully. That's an excellent question, Emma. The brain might prioritize visual input over the synesthetic experiences you have now. You might lose that special way you experience music. What about the way I can tell when someone is lying just by their voice? Ethan asked. Would I still be able to do that if I'm looking at their faces? You might not develop that skill as highly, because your brain would be getting visual cues about honesty and emotion. You'd probably become more like most people, good at reading some social cues, but not exceptionally gifted. Marcus watched his children process this information, seeing them truly grapple with the concept of trading extraordinary abilities for ordinary sight. Dr. Vasquez, Emma said finally, do you think we should do the surgery? Elena was quiet for a long moment. Emma, Ethan, I think you should make whatever choice feels right to you. There's no correct answer to this question. But what would you choose? Ethan pressed. If you were us? I can't answer that, because I'm not you. I've never experienced the world the way you do. Elena leaned closer to her camera. But I can tell you this. In all my years of research, I've never met children who seem as complete and confident as you two. Most of my patients come to me because their blindness prevents them from doing things they desperately want to do. You both seem to be thriving exactly as you are. After the call ended, Emma and Ethan asked Marcus to leave them alone to discuss what they'd learned. He respected their privacy, though he found himself pacing his study like an expectant father, which, he supposed, he was. 2 hours later, they found him in his office. We've decided, Emma announced. Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs. And we want to meet some of Dr. Vasquez's other patients first, Ethan said. Kids who've had the surgery. We want to ask them what it was really like. It was a request Marcus hadn't anticipated, but it made perfect sense. Elena arranged for them to speak with 3 families, one where the procedure had been completely successful, one where there had been complications, and one where the child had chosen to have the artificial vision system removed. The conversations were profound and sometimes difficult. Sarah, a 9-year-old who'd had the surgery at age 6, told them about the wonder of seeing her parents' faces for the first time, but also about losing the heightened sense of hearing that had made her exceptional at music. I can see colors now, Sarah explained over video chat, but I can't hear them anymore like I used to. Sometimes I miss that. It was like having a secret superpower. David, 11, had experienced complications during his procedure. The artificial vision system worked, but he suffered from persistent headaches and occasional seizures. I can see, he told them honestly, but it hurts sometimes. My parents feel guilty, like it's their fault. I don't want them to feel that way, but I also wish we'd never done it. Most impactful was their conversation with Maria, a teenager who'd chosen to have her artificial vision system deactivated after 2 years. Why? Emma asked gently. Because I realized I was trying to become someone else, Maria replied. The person I was before the surgery was smart and capable and happy. The person I became after was just ordinary. I could see, but I'd lost everything that made me special. After these conversations, Emma and Ethan retreated to Emma's room for what Marcus privately called the final deliberation. He could hear their voices through the door, serious, thoughtful, occasionally punctuated by laughter or long silences. When they emerged 3 hours later, Marcus was waiting in the living room, pretending to read but actually staring at the same page for an hour. "Dad," Ethan said, settling beside him on the couch while Emma curled up in the opposite chair and dead pleased. "We've made our decision," Emma added. Marcus set down his book, his hands trembling slightly. "Tell me." Emma and Ethan looked at each other, communicating in that wordless way they had. Emma nodded, and Ethan took a deep breath. "We don't want the surgery," Ethan said quietly. Marcus felt a complex rush of emotions: relief, disappointment, pride, and something else he couldn't immediately identify. "We talked to Dr. Vasquez's other patients, and we realized something," Emma continued. "The kids who were happiest after surgery were the ones who really needed to see to do what they loved. Sarah wanted to be an artist but couldn't paint without sight. David wanted to play baseball. But we already love what we do." "I love music," Ethan said. "And I love the way I understand music now. I don't want to trade that for seeing. And I love the way stories create pictures in my mind," Emma added. "Pictures that might be more beautiful than real ones because they're exactly what I imagine them to be." Marcus felt tears he hadn't expected gathering in his eyes. "Are you sure? This might be your only chance." "Dad," Emma said gently, "we're not incomplete. We're just different. And we like who we are. But you've always asked about colors, about seeing my face. And we still wonder," Ethan admitted. "But wondering isn't the same as needing. We can be curious about sight without needing to see." Emma leaned forward in her chair. "Dad, do you remember when you read us that story about the prince who gave up his crown to become a baker?" Marcus nodded, though he realized Emma couldn't see the gesture. "Yes. You asked us if we thought he made the right choice, and we said yes because he chose to be who he really was instead of who everyone expected him to be." Emma's voice grew stronger. "That's what we're doing. We're choosing to be who we really are." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, processing his children's wisdom. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "I'm proud of you, both of you. This was an incredibly difficult decision, and you handled it with more maturity than most adults would have." "Are you disappointed?" Ethan asked quietly. Marcus considered the question seriously. Was he disappointed? He'd spent so much time and energy trying to give his children sight. But looking at them now, confident, thoughtful, complete, he realized what he was feeling wasn't disappointment. It was admiration. "No," he said finally. "I'm not disappointed. I'm amazed. You've taught me something I should have learned a long time ago, that my job as your father isn't to fix you or change you. It's to love you exactly as you are and help you become the best versions of yourselves." Emma grinned. "Does this mean you'll stop taking us to eye doctors?" Marcus laughed, feeling lighter than he had in years. "Yes, sweetheart. No more eye doctors. Unless you change your mind someday, which would also be okay." "We won't," Ethan said with certainty. "We like being us." That night, Marcus called Elena to tell her about the twins' decision. He expected her to be disappointed. After all, she'd spent time getting to know his children and considering their case. Instead, she sounded pleased. "They made the right choice for them," she said. "Marcus, in all my years of research, I've learned that the most successful outcomes happen when patients choose surgery because they need it to become who they want to be, not because others think they should be different." "So you think we made the right decision?" "I think Emma and Ethan made the right decision. And I think you made the right decision in letting them choose." After hanging up, Marcus went to check on his children one last time. They were both asleep, Emma with a book in Braille beside her pillow, Ethan with sheet music scattered across his nightstand. In the soft light from the hallway, they looked peaceful, complete, perfect exactly as they were. For the first time since they were born, Marcus Blackwood went to sleep without guilt about his children's blindness. Instead, he felt something much more powerful, unconditional acceptance of the extraordinary people they already were. 6 months after Emma and Ethan made their decision, Marcus's life had transformed in ways he never expected. The change began with small things: really listening when his children spoke, appreciating the texture of conversations without the distraction of screens and visual input, understanding that his worth as a father wasn't measured by his ability to solve every problem. But the transformation extended far beyond his family life. "Sir, the board is concerned about your recent pivot," his assistant Jennifer said carefully as she briefed him on the day's meetings. "The shareholders are questioning the strategic value of the new acquisitions." Marcus looked up from the Braille materials he'd been studying. He was learning to read the way his children did, finding it meditative and surprisingly challenging. "Which acquisitions are they questioning?" "The assistive technology companies, the non-profit partnerships, the research grants for sensory enhancement projects." Jennifer consulted her tablet. "In the last 6 months, you've invested over $200 million in companies that serve disabled communities. The profit margins are negligible," Marcus finished. "I know." What he didn't tell Jennifer was that profit had ceased to be his primary motivation. Watching Emma and Ethan navigate their decision had shown him something profound about human potential that couldn't be measured in quarterly earnings. His latest acquisition was a small company that developed audio-described entertainment, movies, television shows, and live performances made accessible to blind audiences. The founders were a married couple, both blind since birth, who had revolutionized how visual media could be experienced through sound. Mr. Blackwood, the wife Rebecca, had said during their first meeting, "Most people think audio description is just narrating what's happening on screen. But we've developed technology that creates three-dimensional soundscapes. Blind audiences don't just hear our descriptions, they experience the full emotional and spatial reality of visual media." Marcus had been intrigued. "Show me." They demonstrated their system using a nature documentary. Marcus closed his eyes and listened as their technology transformed the visual experience into something richer than he'd imagined possible. He could hear the space between objects, the emotional undertones of animal interactions, the texture of light and shadow translated into audio cues that painted vivid mental pictures. "This is extraordinary," he'd said. "How many people could benefit from this technology?" 39 million blind people worldwide, Rebecca's husband David had replied. "But also anyone who wants to experience media in a more immersive way. We've had sighted beta testers say our audio enhancement makes them notice things in films they'd never seen before." Marcus had purchased their company within a week, not because it would generate massive profits, but because it would change lives. The board had been less enthusiastic. Now, sitting in his office 6 months later, Marcus faced a choice between the businessman he'd always been and the father he was becoming. "Schedule a board meeting for tomorrow," he told Jennifer. "Full attendance required." The next morning, Marcus faced 12 of the most powerful business minds in the country, all of whom had made him very wealthy and all of whom looked increasingly concerned about his recent decisions. "Marcus," board chairman William Hartley began, "we need to discuss the direction of the company. Your recent investments show a concerning trend away from profitable ventures toward what can only be described as charity work." "Are you questioning my business judgment, William?" "We're questioning your priorities. You've always been laser-focused on growth and profitability. These new acquisitions seem driven by emotion rather than strategy." Marcus stood and walked to the conference room's massive windows. The city spread below him, full of people navigating their days, most of whom he'd never given much thought to before Emma and Ethan changed his perspective. "Let me tell you about a company I'm considering acquiring next," Marcus said, turning back to the board. "They've developed haptic technology that allows people to feel digital interfaces. Blind users can navigate smartphones and computers through touch feedback that's so sophisticated they can type faster than most sighted people." "Market size?" asked board member Patricia Chen. "Currently small. But they're not just serving blind users. Their technology has applications for virtual reality, medical simulation, remote surgery, automotive interfaces." Marcus returned to his seat. "They're not profitable yet because they're focused on perfecting the technology rather than rushing to market with an inferior product." "That's a significant risk," William pointed out. "So was every other major investment this company has ever made." Marcus leaned forward. When I started this company, everyone said social media integration was a fad. When we moved into mobile computing, the board thought I was chasing trends. When we invested in artificial intelligence, you all worried we were abandoning our core business. Those were different, Patricia argued. Those were emerging markets with clear profit potential. And this isn't. Marcus pulled up a presentation on the room's main screen. The global assistive technology market is worth $35 billion and growing by 15% annually. The sensory enhancement market could reach $100 billion within the next decade. We're not making charitable donations. We're positioning ourselves at the forefront of technologies that will transform how humans interact with digital systems. The board members exchanged glances. Marcus could see them calculating, weighing risk against potential reward. There's something else, Marcus continued. These technologies don't just serve disabled communities. They enhance human capability across the board. The audio description technology we acquired is being adapted for military training, allowing soldiers to process complex tactical information through enhanced audio cues. The haptic interface company is working with surgeons to develop remote operation systems that let doctors feel what they're operating on from thousands of miles away. You're talking about human enhancement, William said slowly. I'm talking about expanding the definition of human potential. Marcus clicked to the next slide, showing user testimonials from their recent acquisitions. My children taught me something I'd missed in 20 years of business. Different isn't deficient. Different is often superior. He told them about Emma's synesthetic composition, Ethan's perfect pitch, the way blind users of their new technologies often outperformed sighted users because they weren't limited by visual assumptions about how interfaces should work. We have the opportunity to lead a market that doesn't just serve underrepresented communities. It uses their innovations to benefit everyone. Marcus looked around the table. That's not charity. That's the smartest business strategy we've ever considered. Board member Richard Santos spoke up. What about return on investment timelines? Longer than we're used to, shorter than we think. Marcus clicked to financial projections. The assistive technology companies we've acquired have shown consistent user growth and increasing revenue. They're not profitable yet because they're investing in research and development at unsustainable rates. With our backing, they can continue innovating while scaling production and marketing. The board spent the next 2 hours drilling down into specifics, and Marcus found himself defending his vision with the same passion he'd once reserved for conventional profit-driven ventures. But this felt different. This felt like building something that mattered beyond quarterly earnings. When the meeting ended, the board had voted to support his new direction, not unanimously, but by a strong majority. As they filed out, William lingered behind. Marcus, I have to ask, is this about your children? It started with them, Marcus admitted. But it's become about something much bigger. They showed me that human potential comes in forms I'd never considered. That different approaches to problems often yield superior solutions. That the margins of society often contain the innovations that will benefit everyone. William nodded slowly. It's either the most brilliant pivot I've seen in 30 years of business, or you're having an expensive midlife crisis. Marcus laughed. Maybe both. But I'd rather risk everything on human potential than play it safe with predictable returns. That evening, Marcus came home to find Emma and Ethan in their usual spots, Emma composing at her piano, Ethan reading in Braille while music played softly in the background. But now he saw them differently. Not as children he'd failed to fix, but as innovators whose approaches to experiencing the world had shown him possibilities he'd never imagined. How was work, Dad? Emma asked without looking up from her music. Different, Marcus said. But good different. Like us, Ethan said with a grin. Exactly like you, Marcus agreed, and realized that the most successful venture he'd ever undertaken wasn't a company or a product. It was learning to see the world through the eyes of people who couldn't see at all. 2 years later, Marcus stood in the main auditorium of the Blackwood Center for Sensory Innovation, watching Emma perform her Symphony of Colors with a full orchestra. The piece had evolved from her childhood compositions into something that music critics were calling revolutionary. A work that translated visual concepts into auditory experiences so vivid that sighted audience members reported seeing colors while listening. In the front row, Ethan sat with Dr. Elena Vasquez, both of them wearing prototypes of the latest haptic feedback system his company had developed. They could feel the vibrations of individual instruments through their fingertips, experiencing the music as a tactile landscape that complemented the auditory performance. "Your daughter is remarkable," Elena murmured as Emma's violin soared through a passage that painted sunset in sound. "And your son's technical feedback helped our engineers solve problems they'd been working on for months." Marcus nodded, watching his children with wonder that hadn't dimmed in the years since they'd chosen to remain blind. If anything, his amazement had grown as he witnessed them not just thriving in their world, but actively reshaping how others understood human potential. The Blackwood Center had become more than a business venture. It was a laboratory for human enhancement that challenged conventional assumptions about ability and disability. Emma served as a consultant for their audio design projects, while Ethan's perfect pitch and spatial awareness had made him invaluable in developing navigation systems for visually impaired users. But perhaps most remarkably, both children had begun working with Elena on a new project that flipped the traditional approach to vision restoration on its head. Instead of trying to give blind people artificial sight, Elena had explained to Marcus 6 months earlier, we're exploring how to give sighted people enhanced sensory experiences. Emma and Ethan are helping us understand how the brain can process multiple sensory inputs simultaneously without becoming overwhelmed. The research had led to breakthrough developments in virtual reality systems that incorporated smell, sound, and touch in ways that created more immersive experiences than purely visual interfaces. Major tech companies were licensing their innovations, and the applications seemed limitless, from medical training simulations that let students feel what they were learning, to entertainment systems that engaged all the senses. "Dad," Ethan had said recently, "I think we made the right choice about not getting artificial vision." "Why's that?" "Because if we could see like regular people, we wouldn't be able to help develop these systems that let everyone experience the world the way we do. We'd be too focused on the visual stuff to notice what we can teach people about everything else." Now, watching Emma conduct the orchestra through the finale of her symphony, Marcus reflected on the unexpected turns his life had taken. The desperate father who'd once tried to buy his children's sight had become an advocate for celebrating different forms of human experience. The ruthless businessman who'd measured success only in profits had discovered that the most valuable innovations often came from serving communities that mainstream markets ignored. As the last notes of Emma's symphony faded, the audience erupted in sustained applause. Marcus found himself crying, not from sadness or regret, but from overwhelming pride and joy. His children had taught him that the greatest gift he could give them wasn't the ability to see the world as he did, but the support to experience it as uniquely themselves. After the performance, the family gathered backstage with Elena and several of the researchers from the center. Emma was glowing with excitement, her face flushed from conducting, while Ethan was deep in conversation with one of the audio engineers about refinements to their latest system. "Mr. Blackwood," Elena said quietly, pulling Marcus aside, "I wanted you to know, the work your children are doing with us is going to change lives. We've had inquiries from rehabilitation hospitals around the world wanting to incorporate their techniques into therapy programs." "They'd be proud to know that," Marcus replied. "Though I suspect they already do. They have an uncanny ability to understand the impact of their work." Elena smiled. "They get that from their father. Actually, I think I learned it from them." As the evening wound down, Marcus found himself alone with Emma and Ethan in the center's quiet lobby. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sparkled with lights that his children had never seen but understood better than most sighted people. "Dad," Emma said, taking his hand, "do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd chosen differently? If we'd gotten the artificial vision?" Marcus considered the question seriously. "Sometimes." "Do you?" "Not really," Ethan said. "I mean, I'm curious about what we might have experienced, but I can't imagine being different people than we are now." "And we like who we are," Emma added. "We like the work we do, the way we understand music and sound and space. We like being able to help other people see the world differently." Marcus squeezed Emma's hand. "I like who you are too. Both of you. Exactly as you are. Even though we can't see you?" Ethan asked with a grin. "Especially because you see everything else so clearly." As they prepared to leave, Marcus took one last look around the center. At the laboratories where researchers were developing technologies that would enhance human capability, at the performance space where Emma had just premiered a symphony that redefined how people thought about sensory experience, at the offices where Ethan consulted on projects that would help millions of people navigate their world more effectively. The millionaire had indeed had everything except his children's sight. But in trying to give them vision, he'd gained something far more valuable: a new understanding of what it meant to truly see. Emma and Ethan had taught him that sight wasn't just about processing visual information. It was about perceiving possibilities, understanding potential, and recognizing that human experience came in infinite, beautiful variations. They walked out into the city night together, three people who saw the world in completely different ways but understood each other perfectly. Behind them, the Blackwood Center glowed with the light of innovations that would help others expand their own definitions of human potential. The desperate father's quest to fix his children had ended years ago. The journey of celebrating their extraordinary capabilities was just beginning. As they reached their car, Emma paused. "Dad, I have an idea for my next composition." "What's that, sweetheart?" "A piece about seeing without sight. About all the ways people can experience vision that have nothing to do with eyes." Marcus smiled, no longer surprised by his daughter's wisdom but still moved by it. "I think that would be beautiful." "It will be," Emma said confidently. "Because the most beautiful things can't be seen anyway. They have to be felt." In the end, Marcus realized, his children had given him the greatest gift of all. Not the ability to see the world through their eyes, but the wisdom to understand that there were as many ways of seeing as there were people in the world, and each was precious in its own right. The millionaire had everything, including something he'd never thought to want: children who were perfect exactly as they were, and the vision to appreciate that perfection.